We can go ahead and get started. Thanks all for joining us today. We have a lot to talk about, so we will get through this early stage very quickly, but just want to welcome you to the latest in our Valid Questions podcast series. Ruben, you can go ahead. All right. The series is presented by Certiverse. This is our second season doing this style of Q&A format. But if you'd like to learn a bit more about Certiverse, feel free to check out the site. We are an end-to-end AI-boosted exam development and delivery platform. So happy to answer more questions about that. But that is not our focus for today. We will introduce our panelists who we'll be talking to today.
All right.
Andrea, if you could start.
Sure. Thank you, Certiverse, for having me on. Andre Allen, Chief Business Officer with HRCI. We are the HR partner. We are the career partner for the HR professional. Got my words twisted there. Been known in history for certification, but we're much more than that. We have targeted learning. We have certifications for organizations, as well as a vibrant community of HR professionals. So look forward to the discussion today.
Cool. Thank you, Alan. And my name is Ruben Garcia, and I am CEO and co-founder of Certiverse.
Great. You said Alan when you meant Andre, but we're all here.
We're all family.
Andrew, you should introduce yourself. You didn't have your picture there. Sorry.
I'm just a secret. I did change it. It just is not showing up. I'm Andrea Brown. I'm the director of events at Certiverse. So I'll be moderating our discussion today. And if you do have any questions as we go along, you can feel free to add those in the Q&A or in the chat. Pick what level of anonymity you would like, and we will save a little time at the end to address some of the questions that might come up. But we will start off with some that we have planned. So the first is, what is the most common misconception that you're hearing about AI's impact on jobs and teams? And Andre, if you could get us started with that.
Sure. And this is a topic that, can generate a lot of passion and concern. And I wouldn't call it a misconception, but I would call it maybe a mischaracterization. Because I believe immediately we jump to the, sort of AI is going to put everyone out of a job. And I think there was a CEO in India that put it best. It's not that AI is going to put people out of jobs. AI will probably displace people that don't use AI. And so to me, it's not necessarily about, putting people out of opportunity, but giving people the opportunity to be more productive, to do more than what they would have done. And even still, I think we focus a lot on the individual impact at times when really there are individuals out there, teams of one, small businesses, organizations that wouldn't otherwise afford the opportunity to have a large team or have a large development team. We think those also open up the opportunities for those organizations to have larger teams and be more productive through agents. So I would say the mischaracterization is that there's only a boogeyman side to AI, and there's not a opportunity side to AI.
Yeah, I would agree. I think like just from we're a technology company, right? So we have a pretty big team of software developers and product managers. And it is, I would say the impact is really interesting because we were obviously using agents to help write part of our software, right? But what's interesting is that the some of the areas, like as an example, where we're using AI to help us is in areas that we probably would not have expanded into. So as an example, one of our customers a couple months ago said, "Hey, we would love for you to have these 17 languages added to the Certiverse platform." So it's like, and it's I mean 17 languages. It's a lot of languages, right? From Russian and French, Canadian French, and Thai, and all sorts of crazy stuff. That's just like we had like about 4 or 5 languages, but just to go from that to a much broader base, it would have taken us a long time. You have translation experts and all of that. And we probably would have turned most of it down. We would probably said, we can't do that. It's just it's a big burden to be able to roll all these out. But this client's like, we really need it. We deliver in all these languages, and we had the team use an agent to go in and translate our whole entire website into all of those languages. Same thing with our test driver. But I do feel like, I mean, I think we haven't we've grown our team earlier this year, but I feel also like our team is doing more, right? And I think that's a big part of it is that I feel like people more our team is just they're just more empowered, right? So like and there is I think something that's interesting because I do see like a lot of I would say there is collaboration within roles as well, so that our project team, our product team, as an example, they're writing code, they're building prototypes. Uh, our our QA team is now writing better reports because of AI. Um, we even have a team, we have a big base of users in South America, and now the quality of what they write from a requirements perspective has increased as well. So I do feel like that it's also changed, giving a lot of people a lot of opportunity and changed roles. But so far, I got to say though, like from as an entrepreneur, we're always out there trying to hire people. There's I really, there was a big scare. Everybody's the fear of, like, AI is going to take everybody's jobs, and now we have coding and AI coding. But I got to say, it's like it's hard to find developers still,
Yeah.
and you have to be like the we hired some really great talented people last year, um, that are their roles were more specific to AI software development, to build AI prototypes and so forth. And there's not that many people out there, so I just feel like there's always a transition when it comes to technology, but I feel like it is. I haven't seen it. We haven't seen it yet. And I don't know. I wonder if you can speak a little bit to that, but
Yeah, we're seeing the exact same thing. If anything, we're starting to see individuals stretched in their capacity. It's not so much it's taking a job away, but let me use a for instance case. So our CIO, we were fortunate. Our CIO slash CTO, Chris Scanlon, he has red pilled the organization in terms of Anthropic and agents and the use of Claude. And as a result of that, many teams have now embraced that as part of their tool set to be able to complete whatever they're going to do. So we have one developer that was given a project earlier this year, and rather than going through the normal sort of software development life cycle of using internal resources, she established an agentic team that included a UX person, a QA person, a documentation person, even sort of a finance person to say, okay, in terms of what we're doing here, what would be the ROI around this? What would be the man hours that we would have used if we would have done this in the real world? And so now you have an individual who is pretty much a technical individual contributor that's now become somewhat of a manager or a leader of a small team, that has capabilities beyond even their original sort of skill set that they were educated about. So she was able to take a concept and sort of not only bring it to life, but bring together a market ready, scalable application, right? This is ready, hardened and ready for prime time, because on her team was a security person, a security agent that was able to go through and not only look at the code, but the infrastructure set up. So I think the opportunity is really, really about that redesign of roles and redesign of the workforce to accommodate this space where we're now also incorporating these agents into our teams. That's the greatest opportunity to me.
yeah, I think that's game changing. There's yeah, there's a lot to be said about just empowering somebody to be able to do, 8 or 9 things. Let me see. All right,
Fantastic. Yeah, I
second
know we could
question
keep
here.
going. So
Sorry.
let's move it forward. That's all right. We could have just stayed on that one. And I think you've given some examples, directly from our own experiences, but looking at, the broader workforce, what are organizations that are winning with AI doing differently?
Do you want me to start with that one, Ruben?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so I'll reference, Deloitte published their Human Capital Trends report earlier this year, and it gave some really interesting insights into this very specific topic. And organizations that are winning tend to get the human machine interaction right. And what do I mean by human machine interaction? Well, when we implement a technology, kind of like we did back in the 90s, 2000s, you'd buy a tech, you'd spec that tech, you deploy that tech, test and build, and you'd sort of go through the normal life cycle. Well, the difference with this sort of technology paradigm is that it's not just a tech, it's a tech with an intelligence and the ability to learn and the ability to have culture built into it, not just code and logic. So in most implementations where we put in some sort of AI thing and implement it as tech without the same feedback loop that we provide individuals during their developmental process, the tech rapidly fails. But in companies that view this AI agent as something that requires that same feedback loop, while probably not an annual performance review, but some sort of learning feedback loop on culture, performance, expectations, how things happen in our organization, if that feedback loop exists, there's higher chances of success with that implementation of agents, AI, or whatever sort of approach. But in companies that chose to just do it as tech, implement it as tech, fire and forget it, those tended to fail at a very high rate.
Andre, do you think that these like the is there any data out there or just any just kind of knowledge about the size of companies that are winning with AI? Is it small, medium? Is it large enterprises?
So the Deloitte study went across many different organizations. So I don't have it broken up by sort of which lane they live in. So I'm going to speak from just gut and personal experience because I don't have the data to cite. What I believe is that there are organizations out there that are benefiting more from shadow AI and shadow agents that they don't know that they've implemented. They're embedded in the tools that they buy, so they get benefit from that. Larger organizations that do actually quantify this as well, we've been told by leadership that we want to implement some sort of agentic approach, or we've been given some sort of mandate that rather than doing this, we're going to look at agents and AI as a possible opportunity. The measures around those, and I think that's what Deloitte really looked at. The measures around those is that, those organizations that literally just implemented it as a tech, it did not go well. And it took multiple iterations if they were able to achieve ROI. But those that did choose a more human machine interaction or human machine feedback loop in the process, they had more success in the long term implementation of those things. But it would be
Yeah.
interesting to see if there is data out there to support that.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting right now as well is that there's right now AI infrastructure, it's a moving target, right? So
Yeah.
you see big organizations that go and they acquire licenses of Anthropic or whatever or OpenAI at first, and then all of a sudden they now there's a shift. They don't, for whatever reason, they'll change to a different vendor. And what I see a lot and read a lot about is a lot of decentralization with AI right now. It's just
Hmm.
it's not centralized and it's not managed yet. So, I could see this across my teams, right? Like people using Copilot, people using Claude, people using ChatGPT, and then there's other LLMs. We have, I mean, I know some of my team members use their own LLMs that they've, open source LLMs and so forth. So it is kind of interesting because it's still, I would say, fragmented. And, before it's one of the things that organizations are going to have to figure out, right? Like at what point, like, because once you centralize it, then it changes, you have to manage it,
Yeah.
you have to apply security to it and so forth. So it's a little bit different. But then it also allows for a technology to be used broadly across a single organization.
Yeah, it is. It's one of those tension places where because you're contributing to a public model, right? There's
Mhm.
always fear that my proprietary information, my confidential information is now going to be out there. It's going to be shared, and we even have case law about how that was done, both overtly and covertly by certain organizations, right? Um, and I don't think, in terms of experimentation as an individual, as long as you're not sharing company or proprietary data, playing with all the models, I think, just gets you smart about what the models specialize in, right? But when it comes to an organization, I think centralizing on a governance, on an approach, guardrails, how we are to use the model, and locking that model in so that only the data that you want shared with the public model is shared, I think that's very important, right? So organizations should embrace some sort of AI governance model for its employees, but then still encourage experimentation and opportunities for improvement there.
All right. Thank you, Audrey.
All right. So as those changes are happening and the models are being implemented, how are those changes and what is the impact that we're seeing in the actual team structure and role division in organizations?
Yeah, well, I alluded to this earlier, and it's just it's something that's there, but I just don't think we've caught it, and we haven't put arms around the real impact. And I'm an old school software guy, right? I've got certifications in technologies that no longer exist, right? um, so back then you could be a very good individual contributor, learn the ins and outs, syntax, and technological approach of whatever your technology of choice is. And you can be very successful in that. Now we're taking those same individuals and we're giving them an Anthropic account and allowing them to set up these agents. Well, these individual contributors are now sort of implicitly becoming, team leaders to some degree, even though they're not leading humans the same way and not dealing with the same human issues. But they are dealing with expert intelligences that have expertise beyond their core competency, right? Which is for an individual contributor, it can sometimes be a struggle to try to govern that, right? So I think dealing with the whole transition from individual contribution to agentic oversight, that creates an opportunity for organizations to stand up and say, here's how you do it. We at HRCI believe that is the greatest opportunity for human resources to be the intervener, the governor, the standard setter for how these things are implemented in organizations and how these people can be trained into that next level of skill. Because we just believe these jobs are going to be reimagined. In my early days in technology, the network guy, the database guy, the infrastructure guy, the software guy, they were all different guys. Somewhere in the 2000s, that became one person. And as this gets further and further and technology becomes more abstract, it's going to be somebody outside of IT that
Yeah.
will, through a prompt. So I think really reimagining these roles is going to be paramount.
Do you think, I mean, going back to your point, right? Like if you look at the 90s, you're right. There was a convergence of technologies and I was a network administrator, then I was managing the company's mail system and all that stuff. But I also felt, I mean, I was never a database administrator, but imagine like the convergence of all of those roles just coming into like all at once, right? And we're not just talking about technology, we're talking about bookkeeping, accounting, marketing, sales, product, right? Somebody who does product marketing can now do some product development. Somebody who does product development can now do coding. I feel like, I feel like I don't want to say it's a bit chaotic right now, but I feel like the effects are exponential. It's not quite as they were in the 90s, right? But I feel like I do wonder, I mean, especially for smaller organizations, not a big deal, but what happens with these large organizations? Because a lot of it, it's it's a little bit territorial, right? Like
Yeah,
you kind of
yeah.
love to work in your area, and all of a sudden you have 50 people around you who now picked up some of your skills.
Yeah, and hopefully universities, colleges, and I know this younger generation, I don't think they think as linearly as we did back then, right? You went, you coming up as sort of an AI native, you kind of feel like all knowledge is at your fingertips, right? And so, does the competency profile of this next generation employee is it their ability to sort of gather, distill information, understanding what a hallucination is, be able to discern reality from whatever, and then be able to course correct something else, right? Maybe that's the new skill set versus specific syntax, right? And I still don't think there is that the role where the specialists really understand the details like the syntax will ever go away because no matter what you do, whenever you have machines making decisions, machines in the hands of intelligent people, that's magic. That's a beautiful thing. And so these people that are able to look at something and say, well, that doesn't smell right. Let's go in and look at this. They're able to detect the touch, taste, and feel things that aren't yet present in AI. That's where the value comes in, and that's where it's going to sustain.
What do you think? What do you think about just kind of like something that I feel like we 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 value it, but it's really difficult to measure, which is creativity.
Yeah.
I feel like that is now something, it's a skill that that you really have to have when you're, when you're using AI.
Yeah, and so a question is what is creative, right? And so you'll see behind me there's several guitars or whatever. So I'm a little bit of a musical creative. So I understand what it is to use that part of the brain to create. But even in my creativity, what did I get that from? I got that from learning from other people that have created, right? I took that knowledge and I synthesized it and I learned to develop and sort of morph that into my own side, So yeah, I may have, I don't think I think I've created, but I don't think I've ever created anything on my own. So to me, the speed of being able to generate ideas, get different points of view, and put different spins on things opens up the door. I think those that may be more threatened by it are ones that sort of rely on their ability to covertly. I think we all as creators kind of steal a little bit, right?
Mhm.
But stealing without understanding that you're stealing or believing that you're really creating this stuff, I think those are the folks that are threatened, right? But the rest of us that understand that every bit of our creativity comes from the inspiration of other creators, we really understand that this is a tool to get us there faster, versus something that's sort of taking away our value as creators.
Good point. All right, Andrea. Number four.
Yeah. And this is our last planned question. So if anyone does have anything they'd like to, you know, get a little bit more detail about or have any questions about what we've discovered, please just add that to the chat. Otherwise, we will probably just have plenty to talk about to go till time. So unless we see something come up, we'll keep going. So we will end with what should HR leaders be measuring or paying attention to that most aren't? And I think we can also put in an element of the, we touched on the competency and aspect as well. So we can roll in the certification question to this as well.
Yes, and we've been very keen on this because this is one great opportunity for HR leaders to really level their organizations up, really lead the charge on what it is. So having had a measurement background as well, reimagining what the competencies of the future will be. And so, you have roles, there's certain roles that require I have sort of in my brain immediate knowledge because it requires an immediate response. I don't want the surgeon on the operating table sort of Googling and asking chat, where a certain vein or a valve is, right? I want him to know that from experience. However, there are other roles that are not as critical. And so to me, having the individual that has the curiosity to search, the desire to experiment, the ability to find and sort of morph and remix information, and then the ability to smell when something isn't exactly right, because we're going to be relying on agents and AI and LLMs more. And the more information these things get, the more they have the propensity to hallucinate a little bit based upon their learnings, right? We have to be able to look at that and discern what's going on. So to me, the new competency matrix may not be so skill specific. It may be more durable skills mixed with more ability to understand and discern and dissect and distill. So it's a little bit more abstract. So that's one thing. Two, we need to be on the forefront of reimagining roles. So just as we described how technical roles changed in the 90s, there's probably going to be another wave of roles that change, more, move together. We saw, I think it was Moderna that took their HR role and put it under the office of the CIO, which is sort of an unprecedented move. Now, I thought that was an exception to the rule, and I've heard from other HR leaders, no, that's happening in several other places. So now we're deciding from a leadership and strategy standpoint that the HR function is part of the technical strategy of the organization, right? So they need to be merged. So to me, HR should be on the front of leading what that looks like. And then as we recruit, as we select, the thing that I'm fearful of is there was a recent study from Stanford University called Canaries in the Coal Mine, and it talked about how a lot of organizations, rather than bringing in new green candidates that allow them to learn as they go, those entry level opportunities, Ruben, like you and I had when we didn't know anything, instead of hiring those folks, we're going to use agents. And from a dollars and cents perspective, it makes sense. From a long-term sustainability of our workforce, it does not, because those new individuals now do not have the opportunity to stub their toe and learn as we did, so they can become the intelligent sort of decision makers, discerners, and the ability to understand what hallucinations look like. So right now, if you're experienced, you're not in danger. I am concerned for the new entrants into the workforce. So I'll stop there, and I can keep going on and on about that future.
Yeah, I mean that's really interesting. So like how do you, I guess, I mean that's got to impact just the hiring process, right? And who you're hiring. I know that there's, especially in the US right now, there's a lot of entry level positions that are no longer needed, right? Especially just the all the entry level stuff for everything, for HR, technology. It is. I wonder how. I do wonder how that's going to be dealt with, right? Because at least all these entry level jobs lead to promotions and learning and taking on new things.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a social decision, right? That's a business decision that we have to make. And I hope that we land on the side of, yes, there is a financial component of using AI, but we have to invest in what the future workforce looks like. And so whether that's reinventing what the entry path looks like so that people without experience can gain that experience, or creating roles where experience is a little bit less relevant, which I don't understand a universe like that. I think experience plays a role in everything we do. So I'm just speculating there. But either way, we cannot kill our pipeline into the future managers, middle managers, executives. We can't kill that pipeline simply because we want to eliminate the cost of roles through AI. That to me is that's a very short-sighted decision.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, it could be, again, I don't know what we can't predict the future, but it could also have an adverse effect where it will entry level people are now going to come with more tools, more technology, and it's almost they may start in, I would say, places ahead that they would have started just because they, like I'll give you one example. Like we hired an AI engineer and he's amazing and he's doing something and he's really young and he's doing I think this is his first job, first or second job. And I feel like he's got like decades of experience just because of all the technology that he's brought to the company.
Hmm.
Um, and I would say like it's a little bit scary, but he's probably an experience perspective, not time experience, but just from a knowledge perspective and
Hmm.
what he's been able to do. I feel like he's got years, 10 years more seniority than some of our
Hmm.
developers who have been doing this for 10 years. So that part, I think it's TBD. I think, we're still trying to figure that out. But, I do feel like native AI, uh, people that graduated college and have gone into AI, they do have some, I would say, advantage, over people like me who are definitely not native AI users.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like we're ready for a redefinition of what entry level even means and who, what that path looks like at the beginning. But that brings us to the end. So thank you all so much. You can go forward one more slide, Ruben. If anyone does have any questions, of course, reach out to Ruben or Andre on LinkedIn. And you can reach us at answers@sodaverse.com if you require any follow-up or need anything else from us. We'll be happy to send out recordings as well if anyone missed it or you'd like to share. And make sure to just keep track of what we have coming up next. And we'll talk to y'all soon. Thanks so much.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you,
Thanks,
Andre.
everybody.
Thank you,
Thank
Andrea.
you all.